Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman from Virginia and gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger. Thank you so much for being here, Congresswoman. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It is great to see you in person. So let's set the stage and talk about tonight, a huge first night of this convention. And as we've been talking about throughout this broadcast so far, everything's different. It was expected just a month ago that President Biden was going to be at the top of the ticket. Tonight, he officially passes the torch to Vice President Harris. What are you expecting to hear from him?
Well, I'm expecting him to talk about some of the most consequential laws that he ushered through Congress and the United States Senate. Everything from, an extraordinary investment in supporting veterans facing toxic exposure with the Honoring Our Pact Act, to the generationally important infrastructure bill that has already sent $10 billion to Virginia for roads, bridges, our broadband internet connectivity. The list goes on, bringing manufacturing back home to Virginia and the rest of the country with the CHIPS and Science Act. So I expect he'll talk a lot about those accomplishments that we're so proud of, and the reality of what it means to pass the torch, pass the baton to the next generation, in him, choosing to step aside and now supporting his vice president.
Talk a little bit about how it feels to be here. One of the big questions, of course, is about party unity. This party is energized. There's no doubt about that. Chuck Todd just brought up a great point. Do you feel like the party's energized because you have a chance at winning, if you look at the polls, or are you energized around Vice President Harris? And is this a moment for her to galvanize that type of energy?
So I think the energy exists for a variety of reasons. The stakes of this election are extraordinarily important. Representing Virginia, we know all too well what it would mean if Trump and Vance were to ascend to the presidency and vice presidency, the potential firing of thousands of federal employees when they put in place Schedule F under Agenda 47 or Project 2025. We understand the threat that would exist if they were to move forward with a federal ban on abortion. And so I think that people are motivated recognizing the kind of dire negative consequences of Trump and Vance winning, but also really excited about the prospects of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz winning and what that would mean for our country, the policies that they would pursue, building upon what has occurred under the Biden-Harris administration, as the bills I've mentioned. And so I think the excitement is really just kind of across the board for the stakes of this election and the resoluteness, but also, the reality of where we are.
I'm curious, how do you think she builds on this momentum heading into November? And part of the question, Congressman, is that there are so many question marks about her policies. She just joined the top of the ticket. Does she need to fill in some of those blanks? She just rolled out her economic policies, which I am going to talk to you about. But do you want to see her talk about very clear plans for what she wants to do with the border, very clear plans for how she wants to tackle things like climate change and obviously reproductive rights, which you just brought up?
Well, I'm a policy person, so I do like clear plans and process, steps forward. But I think, even as it relates to an important issue this election, which is the immigration and border security crisis that we continue to face, she's been very clear. The bill that the Senate negotiated in a bipartisan manner, Democrats, Republicans, and an independent, right, that they were ready to pass, that the current President Biden was willing to support, that was sidelined when Speaker Johnson and former President Trump said the bill was dead on arrival and Trump didn't support it. And so her recognizing the important work that's already happening in the halls of Congress and her recognition that, in many cases, some of the potential efforts to deal with some of our country's biggest issues have already been, the groundwork has been laid. I think that's helpful. I look forward to continued conversations about policy, but I think she also recognizes that the House and Senate have great roles in moving that policy to her desk in the first place.
What did you make of her proposal she laid out a number of different things. She wants to make housing more affordable, expand child tax credits. She also, of course, proposed banning price gouging of groceries. It was a controversial controversial proposal. Trump said it amounts to communism. The Washington Post even called it a gimmick. What did you make of that?
So I think it's important, as a former attorney general, and before my CIA days, I was a federal agent. So I have spent, some time looking at the work that she did as attorney general within California. And, notably, she went after predatory lenders. She went after some kind of big business interests that were negatively engaging with consumers. And so I look at the proposal in that frame of, in the case that there may be, negative or potentially kind of collusion type work occurring in pricing, that it's certainly worth looking at. But I think overall, an attention on the housing market, an attention on affordability, attainability, and frankly, in Virginia, part of our challenge is there's just not a large enough supply for the number of people who want to be able to buy or rent. And so getting at all of these issues, they complement one another.
Let's talk about what's happening outside of the convention hall. Those protesters, I know that the city is bracing for the possibility of tens of thousands of them. And some of them are there because of the Israel-Hamas war. Do you think that the vice president has done a good job of listening to their concerns thus far? How should she respond to them this week?
Well, so I know that members of her campaign team and certainly members of the administration have met with various leaders in protest movements. I think that she has been clear in supporting people's First Amendment rights, right? Like this is the value of our democracy, is that when you disagree, you can express that. But I think it's also notable that today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken came out publicly saying that Netanyahu has agreed to the bridging proposal. So that's a first step towards a potential ceasefire. And so it's kind of a reminder that this administration, of which, of course, the Vice President Harris is a key member, this administration has been doing the work of working towards the goals that understandably so many people across the country and the world want to see, which is, ultimately an end to hostilities, certainly within Israel, within Gaza, and a walk back from some of the worry that we have about a more regional conflict in the Middle East.
Well, I have many more questions, but we are out of time. Congresswoman, thank you so much. Really appreciate your being here, giving us your perspective.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Great to see you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.